The terrible secret of the Tysol princess. History will be rewritten. It was early September 1969. Deep within the frozen lands of Siberia, a routine coal mine blast in the small, seemingly ordinary village of Javchik, in the Tez district of the Kemerovo region, unexpectedly opened the door to a discovery. Following the explosion, a drill probe advancing towards the surface encountered a void at depths not normally reached in standard mining operations. The workers and the site crew soon saw that this cavity was a vein, 20 meters wide and extending 70 meters deep. One of the pieces extracted from the vein was an unusually heavy stone block, a sarcophagus, 2 meters long, with smoothly worked edges and bearing fine craftsmanship marks on its surface indicating it was man-made. The discovery of such an object at this depth made everyone at the worksite stop and reconsider. The site manager, Alexander Masel, contacted the authorities and halted work. Using heavy machinery and numerous workers, the sarcophagus was hauled to the surface. On the sarcophagus was a substance that had hardened under years of pressure, encasing its edges. This amorphous, glass-like transparent material began to dissolve as if melting in the sunlight. This sight alone sent shivers down the spines of the villagers and workers. When the sarcophagus was carefully opened, the sight that emerged left the entire village breathless. Inside was filled with a crystal-clear liquid, a hue between pink and blue. Within this liquid lay a young woman, as if waiting to awaken from a deep sleep. She appeared to be in her 30s, about 1.80 meters tall, with a slender but muscular build. Thick blonde curls cascaded from her shoulders to her waist, gently swaying in the water, making their presence felt beneath large blue eyelids. Her dress was embroidered with white lace, the fabric elegant and meticulous. The floral patterns were as vivid as if newly sewn. There were no signs of decay or deterioration on her body. On the contrary, she emanated a peaceful, serene vitality, as if she might open her eyes after a moment's hesitation. At the head of the sarcophagus stood a small, shiny metal box, approximately 25 by 10 centimeters, with rounded corners. No one had any idea of its purpose, function, or the technology used to produce it. Among the villagers, some said it was a seal, others thought it was an unknown device, and some were of the opinion that it was a container holding the woman's secret. There was no certainty. The box, like other elements of the sarcophagus, appeared enigmatic. As news of the event spread, rumors quickly began to take shape in the village. The most disturbing was the claim that a miner, succumbing to curiosity, dipped his finger into the liquid in the sarcophagus and tasted it, shortly after losing his mental balance and going insane. A few weeks later, he was said to have been found dead, frozen at his doorstep. Although the official records listed the cause of death as something else, this story spread unchanged from mouth to mouth in the village. Such narratives feed the fear surrounding an object of mystery. Everyone gathered around the sarcophagus felt both a fascinated admiration and an uneasy shudder at the presence of an unknown power. The discovery quickly reached official channels. Military units, police, and teams of experts in civilian clothes flocked to the village. The area was cordoned off. The authorities' primary goal was to secure control of this extraordinary find. However, the matter was not as simple as planned. The sarcophagus was extremely heavy, impossible to transport by helicopter, and its removal from the excavation site required a major operation. The authorities decided to drain the liquid from the sarcophagus as a way to reduce weight. The logic behind this decision was the desire to follow correct procedure without risking public safety to ensure transportability, but the implementation led to a result that would horrify everyone. As the liquid was pumped out and the sarcophagus partially emptied, the woman's body inside began to darken at a visible rate. It was as if the liquid was a shield activated to preserve the body. As the water was withdrawn, any protective effect that could have been claimed to have formed over thousands of years was reversing. While witnesses watched in horror, the authorities panicked and quickly poured the liquid back into the sarcophagus. This reversal had an effect that could almost be called miraculous. Within minutes, the woman's skin turned back to a dawn pink, and her body returned to its former calm state. Everyone present at that moment felt that this liquid, whatever its name, was the only thing preserving the woman's life or existence, poised on a delicate balance between death and life. 5 days later, a professor from Novosibirsk appeared before the crowd gathered in the village club. Consulting his notes, he presented the initial assessment of the find. His words were of a nature to deepen the shock in the community. Initial laboratory analyses provided surprising clues about the age of the materials associated with the woman in the sarcophagus. The announced results seemed to challenge the conventional boundaries of archaeological knowledge. The found dress fabric and some isotopic components were inconsistent with known prehistoric human burial traditions or known ancient crafts. Several measurements indicated that the samples could be much older than normal archaeological finds. This, if confirmed, could raise serious questions about the accepted chronology of human history. At this point, initial reactions varied. While some voiced alien theories, arguing that such an extraordinary find could not be explained otherwise, scientific circles were cautious. They emphasized that the provisional results required more laboratory verification and that hasty interpretations could be misleading. For the villagers, however, the matter was much simpler. The presence of the woman lying in the sarcophagus was a reality, and the mystery surrounding it had changed their lives irrevocably. The ordinary work that began in the mine would, from that day on, changed the village of Javchik beyond comparison to its past. People could no longer sleep comfortably at night. When the sun set, they felt as if a silent secret of the past was watching them from the shadows. The sarcophagus, the metal box beside it, and the presence of the woman within had become a knot where scientific curiosity, popular fear, and state concern collided. This scene at the end of the affair sowed the seeds of the legend of the Tysol princess, a story suspended between a secret, an awakening, and uncertainty. After the sarcophagus was opened and the initial shock overcome, the matter ceased to be ordinary village gossip. Scientific examination and state logic began to clash on the same field. The brief presentation by the professor from Novosibirsk in the village club further heightened the tension in the region. Laboratories quickly began analyses on the samples, the texture of the dress, the alloy of the metallic box nearby, organic residues found on the surface of the sarcophagus. But the initial results did not tell a single clear story. On the contrary, they were contradictory and confusing. Textile experts reported that the fabric of the dress did not match known traditional techniques. The stitching and thread structure were unusual. Some chemical analyses detected unexpected additives and preservative traces in the fibers. These resembled contemporary textile conservation techniques but could not be definitively linked to any known source in the laboratories. Initial attempts at genetic analysis were limited. The preservation of the samples gave hope to both researchers and excited observers. However, the risk of sample contamination, the hastiness of the sampling process, and field conditions led scientists to be cautious. Warnings that proper laboratory conditions and chain of custody sampling are necessary competed with public curiosity. For the villagers, aside from technical details, the social and psychological aspect of the matter progressed more rapidly. Newspapers initially downplayed the event with short notes. Official statements were always late and limited. This cold, unresponsive attitude from the state created a deep sense of injustice among the villagers. When news spread that the 6 miners who found the sarcophagus had died one after another within a year, this feeling turned to fear. Official reports often provided simple explanations like traffic accident or heart attack, but the villagers found it hard to accept such coincidences. The details of the accidents were vague. Some reports contained incomplete or contradictory information. The families of the deceased were forced to remain silent, some moved away or were removed from their jobs. As tension rose in the village, the security elements deployed to the area and the attitudes of civilians hardened further. Cordoned areas were filled with military surveillance and plainclothes officials. Some cited the reason as preventing information leaks, while others thought the real aim was to suppress public curiosity. Some villagers told of officials coming to their homes and checking documents. Cameras were confiscated. The schoolteacher, Maria Ivanovna, tried to be careful even when answering her students' questions. The children's curiosity made the adults' fear even more visible. Despite the silence of the media and official institutions, rumors spread quickly. Various legends developed in different forms about the liquid being a life-freezing resin, a long-term preservative gel, or an unknown biological fluid. Such catalogs, while not replacing scientific explanation, became one of the ways the public coped with the unknown, storytelling. But over time, the stories became tools that harmed real people and events. Some witnesses withdrew due to pressure or fear and stopped telling what they had seen. This silence suggested the state's intervention was deeper. The authorities prepared a more comprehensive plan to evacuate the site where the sarcophagus was found in a controlled manner and to transport the object. The sarcophagus was removed from the area by camouflaged vehicles with environmental security ensured. Its destination was hidden from the public. While some claims said the sarcophagus was first transferred to the regional garrison and then to a central institute, official channels did not provide information about this transport. This uncertainty reinforced the villagers' belief that the object was taken and hidden by the state. The village's social fabric changed quickly. People who could no longer trust each other as easily as before in the market looked at the newly arrived officials with different eyes. Some young people held secret meetings to not let the matter drop, while the elderly prayed quietly. Prayers were not a common sight in public during the Soviet era, but the village's beliefs were reviving with the helplessness created by the mystery. Some villagers, thinking that appealing to official channels would yield no results, tried sending letters directly to scientific centers in Moscow or Leningrad. Some letters were lost, some went unanswered. During this period, there were also small but significant signs of resistance in the village. A teacher who tried to compile a small list in memory of the workers who found the sarcophagus claimed her house was raided. Several families came together and wrote petitions demanding an investigation into the real causes of the miners' deaths. It remained unclear what became of these petitions because official processes were closed and investigations were limited. Many people became unable to risk speaking out further. The most frightening aspect was the silent seepage that emerged after the suppression of the quest for justice within the community. Things everyone knew but no one could say openly. Memories around the sarcophagus were filled with damaged lives, lost testimonies, and incomplete stories. This silence both evoked a real sense of a cover-up and fed the material of the legend. People continued to ask questions about the limits of science, but at the same time, the basic needs of daily life, work, food, children's education, shrank in the shadow of the mystery. Eventually, the social balance in the village soon broke. Some families gradually began to leave the village. Some workers were transferred to other mines. Those who remained were divided, a small minority who did not give up on the truth, and the majority who accepted the silence. This division was a turning point in Javchik's history. The impact of the sarcophagus was no longer limited to a physical object but had shaped the village's memory, relationships, and future. As years passed, the silence around Javchik grew heavier. The curiosity that came with official silence was replaced by deep suspicion. But the summer of 1973 brought renewed activity near the village. This time, large-scale excavations were initiated on the shores of Lake Berchikal, just 6 kilometers from where the sarcophagus was first found. Military vehicles appearing in the early morning hours cordoned off the area without notifying the surrounding villages. The lake was surrounded by fences. Civilians were not allowed to approach. This time, it was not just about moving a sarcophagus, it was a search operation spread around the lake. The excavations continued for days, weeks. Lights sporadically seen over the lake at night. The shadows of machinery in military camouflage. The occasional rising hum of helicopters were etched into the villagers' memories. Some witnesses said the helicopter didn't look like a normal machine. It was wider, brick-shaped, an odd aircraft for its weight. It was said the helicopter landed and then quickly departed with an unknown load. The details of these accounts varied, but there was a common point. Something had been taken, removed, and covered up. One of the most striking events, deeply affecting the villagers, was reminiscent of the hundreds of graves opened on the islands and shores around the lake. Cemeteries were excavated, their contents examined, findings were repackaged and closed. No one publicly disclosed what was inside. Some eyewitnesses said they saw objects removed from the graves at midnight, placed in shiny metal boxes, and these boxes were collected and loaded onto trucks. Another witness told of a protected crate being opened, but, not knowing what was inside, he put his hands on his head and cried. These images created the impression in the villagers' minds of not just an archaeological dig, but a mass collection. The authorities' attitude was harsher. Officials monitoring workers around the lake removed those taking photos. Drilling reports and work records were kept limited. The whispers among the villagers spoke of the extent of the power held by the state. An object isn't just found, it is taken. Individuals don't just die, they are silenced. These assumptions further eroded the already fragile social trust. Waves of migration began. As some families left the village quietly, those remaining were divided between fear and curiosity. Some minor incidents during the operations fueled cover-up theories. One night, the owner of a shore house near the lake told of seeing a recognizable military truck in front of his door. A piece unloaded from the truck reflected a metallic shine in the sunlight. The next morning, the owner of that house was suddenly hospitalized. While official records said it was a cold, the villagers thought it was no coincidence. Another witness said a young woman trying to photograph some documents sent to the area was stopped and threatened by officials. Such events led people to make their own inferences, even in the absence of public statements. The local effects of the excavation work spread to wider areas. Fishermen living around Birchicle reported a strange odor and color change in the lake water. Several animals died unexpectedly. No official explanation came regarding these. The villagers felt that nature itself was changing around this secret. Some elders said the lake emitted a mysterious light at night. Some young people argued these were just tricks of tired eyes. Whatever the truth, the atmosphere of events had changed. Even nature behaved as if it were the silent language of a witness. Over time, of course, public interest waned while official institutions continued their work. But no information was leaked about the purpose and results of the operations. This silence contributed to the growth of stories spread by word of mouth. Some claimed that other sarcophagi were found there, while others put forward the claim that a much larger structure, perhaps a complex, had been uncovered. Each new rumor fed the mythology surrounding the Tysoll Princess legend, as if urban legends and real events were intertwining into a single body. In an era when the Soviet security apparatus was in play and documents were collected and imprisoned in archives, a few brave or desperate individuals tried to investigate the truth. A few letters were sent, some records were copied and smuggled out. But these pieces were usually incomplete, disconnected from context, more like clues, unverified notes. Over the years, these unofficial documents became the material of legends and conspiracy theories. Some were later deemed fake or exaggerated, but some still attracted researchers' interest. The years immediately following the Birchicle excavations plunged the Tysoll Princess story into a silent wait. The local residents tried to establish a daily life filled with anxieties. State officials continued their work in the shadows. Occasionally leaked bits of information reopened the community's wounds, but no one could give a definitive answer. Thus, the village and its surroundings learned to live with a history half real, half legend, perhaps amidst a conscious forgetting. As the years passed quietly, the Tysoll Princess story accumulated like sediment underground. The pieces spread by word of mouth, the missing documents and forgotten testimonies retained their weight. Until 2002. That year, a published article brought to light some of the documents hidden for years and shattered the silence. The article was based on the testimonies of a retired KGB colonel. His words evoked both astonishment and dread because they contained claims previously unheard of regarding the depths of state archives. In the colonel's narrative, after the 1969 discovery, the central authority handled the event from start to finish. The sarcophagus and other materials found nearby were divided and transported to several different storage facilities, some pieces sent to military research bases, others to civilian scientific institutions. The colonel had been tasked with coordination in the field during those years, and had had to keep some of what he saw hidden for years. The article contained cold, procedural details consistent with the logic of state operation, as well as reluctant confessions, that copies were taken of some documents and kept centrally, that pressure mechanisms were activated to discipline witnesses, that some samples were sent to closed laboratories deemed secure. The colonel claimed that a portion of the documents remained inaccessible. These confessions had a major impact on the public. The article, while not placing the Tysoll Princess legend into academic calendars, ignited a broad debate. Many now believed there were concrete elements hidden by the state, beyond just a village legend. Some independent researchers, following the storage codes and shipment dates mentioned in the article, searched for documents. Some small celery-stalked archive boxes, censored minutes, and distorted seal copies were found. But what was truly shocking was the emergence of some laboratory reports, not the full texts, but fragments, ambiguous but unusual data on the age of the samples, unknown additives detected in the fabric fibers, and trace elements found in the liquid's composition but unidentified. The scientific community split into two poles. One group argued that the limited data at hand did not yet yield definitive results, that the samples were worn and had a high risk of contamination. Therefore, exaggerated inferences should not be made. The other group proposed that even the available data was unusual and that more transparency and independent sampling were essential. The debates were heated, but state institutions largely maintained their silence. Some documents were removed from access, records of some names were blacked out. Along with the article, another element emerged. Claims that the princess's genetic material showed a surprising overlap with modern human DNA. There were two interpretations. First, if the analyses were correct, the being called the princess could actually be a creature belonging to our class. But the burial technique, the liquid in the coffin, and the dress craftsmanship were inconsistent with the knowledge of her era. Second, some reports stated that the tissue samples were susceptible to contamination and the results were prone to misinterpretation. Still, the picture was unclear. Either the truth was at the limit of our understanding, or the evidence at hand was the product of a series of errors and manipulations. Shortly after the article's publication, a few more individuals emerged claiming to have traced the bold statements left by the author. A retired lab technician gave small notes confirming the colonel's account. Another witness said that during the 1973 excavations, he noticed the same symbol on one of the boxes he saw by the lake one night. The symbol reminded him of a catalog number the colonel had mentioned in the article. But most of these testimonies were dismissed by official inquiries. Some seemed closed with starred and vague reports. By the mid-2000s, with the widespread use of the internet, the story gained new life. Researchers shared archive fragments and leaked documents online. People discussed map coordinates. Amateur detectives scanned and compared old newspaper clippings. Several small podcasts and documentary producers published interviews related to the colonel's accounts. These reached wide audiences. But each new publication replaced the old silence with a dark curiosity. How real is the piece you have? Which documents are reliable? Which witnesses were pressured? Which ones saw real things? The emergence of the Thistle princess legend also raised another question. If this being was truly a human-like creature, why was it preserved? Why was it stored in such a liquid? And why did the state hide it? Some proposed a biological preservation mechanism, the idea that the liquid was a cure that chemically fixed the woman's tissues. Others spoke of a technological preservation, a kind of long-term biological stasis device. No hypothesis could cover all the evidence. No hypothesis gained easy acceptance. And finally, years after the article, an event resembling a final note was added to the story. Among a stack of documents obtained by an independent research group, amidst blacked-out lines, a small note was found. The note contained a brief reference to a photographic negative allegedly taken on the day the sarcophagus was opened in 1969, and a few numbers handwritten in the margin: 58.3721N, 79.5124E, coordinates. When the researchers plotted these coordinates on a map, they saw that the indicated point corresponded to a densely forested area near the village of Javchik. But on the map, that point was empty. No road, no old mining remnant, nor any previously reported structure was visible. It was as if the map had erased that region like the negative of a photograph. Other small details following the coordinates were so simple yet so disturbing that some still debate whether it's an unsolved coincidence or an intentional mark. A pink-blue stain on the edge of the note. Could it be a microscopic residue of a piece allegedly stained by the liquid? In another document, a partially erased sentence loomed: "Process not completed. Preservation continues. Revisit. 20 years." And then the page was torn. These pieces strengthened the thought that the Thistle princess might still exist somewhere behind a closed curtain. The uncertainty, for many, was more frightening than the existence itself. The feeling that something is there, inaccessible, and can be intervened with unseen when necessary. The most striking question that comes to mind while writing these final lines is this: if this liquid is truly a tool that preserves life, then who, for what purpose, and by what will applied such preservation? Science? Military research? Or an older, forgotten knowledge? Perhaps the right question is, if such a thing was found once and hidden, could there be more than one? Are there other secrets buried beneath the Earth's surface? Before closing the story, let me convey the smallest but most disturbing piece of evidence that came into the researchers' hands. On the margin of a copy of the 2002 article, there was a note added in handwriting by the author, the retired colonel. A short but cold sentence: if everyone knew this, they would change it. There was no signature beneath it, just a name crossed out with a line. One line below, a color gradation was still visible in a faint stain, a stain resembling the liquid found in the sarcophagus, between pink and blue. Perhaps the stains will continue to fade. Perhaps more pages will be hidden. But one thing was clear: the questions remaining in the shadow of the Tysol princess give birth to new questions before being concluded. And sometimes, the most chilling thing is not the absence of a definite answer, but the possibility that a secret still exists somewhere out there, appearing empty on the map but feeling slightly warm to the touch.